Okay, so you guys, I'm putting this on the recording because I want people to see my shirt today. It says read banned books. It's a good shirt. Anyway, okay, but it's Reading Rainbow. You guys get none of you guys know what Reading Rainbow is. Never mind. Okay, it's totally lost on you, and that's fine. So it's like I know what Reading Rainbow is. No, you don't. Don't lie. Okay, so for our correlation regression, right? So I made your little this thing for you. So all you're gonna do is plop in your data, right? I even made your little data table for you, or your graph for you. Okay. So yours is gonna look like this. I'm gonna do the work on my well, we'll see. The other thing we need to open up is we need to open up StatCat because we need to do our test for normality, and then we got to do our other thing. So stat kitty. All right, so I'm going to be working with yes, it's fine. Okay, and then I don't think it it did work. The buttons worked for me. Normally they don't. I don't know what's happening. Okay, where was I? Am I doing mine? I'm gonna do mine. Nope, I'm gonna do okay. So I'm gonna test it on mine. You guys already remember how to do normality though, yes? So this should not be challenging. Now, because the stem length and the leaf length were measuring two totally different things, right? You wouldn't want to put them all together in the test for normality, right? Because then your data is going to be bimodal, right? And it's not going to be normally distributed. So you want to do them separately. So I'm going to do that. So data is not, distribution is not normal. Oh, snap. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. Okay. Let's see what the other one is though. Let's see. Let's just see. So I don't know what is going to happen with y'all. And this happened last semester too, where the data that were collected were not normally distributed. So what does that mean? Why am I upset about the fact that it's not normally distributed? That means it's non-parametric. Why is that bad? It's not as accurate. And quite frankly, because there isn't a non-parametric equivalent of regret. So that one's normal, but since the other one isn't, it don't matter, right? Because they both have to be normal for it to use a parametric test. So if I was being honest and, like doing this the right way, okay, we would have to use a different test. So let's see, where is the regression? Okay, so here's the regression correlation tab, yeah? So I'm clicking on that. So notice this one is another one where you have to find the right thing to report, right? And so there's the correlation part here. There's something called the Spearman rank correlation, which is here. And then the regression stuff, which is here. And then we have a one-tailed test, which is down there, which is a different thing. So I am going to go back to this one more time. If I was being like a real responsible human being, right, I would not do a regression. What I would do is so see how it says X and Y, remember that, right? That's why we want to make sure that we don't mix up which way they are, because it matters. Okay, so once again, you just take your two columns of data, you just copy them and plop them in. This is like, right? StatCat is your homie, and it makes your life easier. Okay, so that's there. All right, so let's go back to this thing for a hot minute. So if we were being honest with ourselves, right? Non-parametric means I can only do a non-parametric correlation analysis. I cannot technically legitimately do a regression with non-parametric data. Yeah. Now, I am going to say in my lab report, even though these data were not normally distributed, I chose to use a regression analysis for educational purposes, right? Therefore, results may not be accurate. So you would do the same. So we're all going to do regression, whether or not your data is normally distributed. Okay. The thing is, you're just going to put a caveat in there when you say what test you did, right? Regression analysis was chosen for educational purposes, despite the fact that these data were not normally distributed, something like that. Yeah? If that works out for you. If it turns out that your data is normal, then you're fine and you don't need to say anything about it. You just go with regression. Does that make sense? Okay. So the important thing is always to be honest about what you did. So I'm going to be breaking a rule, right? But I'm being honest about it because it's like, but if I'm trying to teach you guys about regression, then I want to be able to use a regression. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at this regression area. And what did I say you're going to report? You're going to report FP R squared and then R. Okay. So I got my F, my P, my R squared here. It also tells me right here, the intercept and the slope of the line. That's kind of nice. Okay. But guess what? We're actually going to use that for something else, right? So, or we're going to use something else to do that is what I'm trying to say. Okay. So in your graph, what's going to happen is as you put in your data, you're going to see it's a scatter plot, right? Because they're making little dots for each point. So you're going to get your scatter plot. And then down here, it's going to be distance from trunk. Over here, what is it going to be? It's going to be leaf length. Oh, crap. I did not mean to do that. I meant to change the words in here, not make the whole thing go away. Thanks. Okay. So it makes a scatter plot. And then what I did is I told it to make me a line of best fit. Okay. And then I also told it to include this little equation. Right now, I don't like where this equation is. It's in a place that's a little hard to see. Would you just stop doing that? I'm going to move it. There we go. I'm going to move it down there just so that it's right. So that it's easy to see and it's in kind of an empty spot. Okay. I also took my title away. So I need to do that. I need to put my title back. So I want a chart title. Okay. What did I call it on the other one? I'm copying and pasting because I'm lazy, you guys. Just doing the same thing. I'm going to copy what you guys did. What you guys are doing. Copy. Paste. Except we don't need the word chart in there. And also, why is this here? Can we just like, I don't like where this is. Okay. I will mess with like on mine. I'll fix the orientation. I don't like that it's in the way of my stuff. So I got to fix that. Okay. But what do I want to say? Here's how you do any of these manipulations, right? So the way that I got the trend line, right? The line of best fit is when you click over here on that plus, you click on trend line. And then we're doing linear because we ain't doing any of this fancy crap. We're not doing a 2-period moving average. I don't even know. Look at that. That's weird, right? And there's like a forecast. What? And then exponential. Nope. We're doing linear. Okay. So you pick linear. And then what was the other thing that I did? Then we also did what other chart line did we add? We added, actually, let's go to this. Okay. Hold please. And then, so that's my line, right? So that gives me my line. And then if I right click on the line, I think that's where it tells me, how do I get the little table? I don't remember how it did that. How to do that? Is that in options? Is that here? No. Under the trend line with more options. Somebody's good at using Excel. Chart, trend line. Trend line. Here? Ah, thank you. More options. And that over here, somebody's good at Excel. Can you help me teach all my classes? That's handy. So there it does the linear and automatic, and then you can see where it says display equation on chart. And then you can also say display the R squared. Boop. So it already did that. So it's doing it again now because I asked it to again, but because I asked for the trend line twice. I basically just totally screwed this up, but right? Yeah. Okay. So does that get you everything you need? I think that it does. Yeah. So let's look at the lab report. So now it's going to be like super blank, right? So now, okay, we got to change our title. What's our title? Relationship between leaf length and distance from stem. In question mark, palm. We did something with palm trees last semester. So we're going to say volunteer oaks. Quercus spa. Yeah. And then because this is a scientific name, somebody, my phone is blowing up. Okay. So it's very empty, right? So in your introduction, some background about why we're wondering this, right? What's the question? What's your hypothesis? All of that stuff, right? So I'm leaving it real open because now you have done this. You've seen one once. You saw one from me doing the chi-square, right? You also see the one that I gave you for the difference in means. Okay. So similar kind of thing. It's a different type of a question, but it's a similar, it's still an introduction, right? So I'm kind of leaving it open and I put the red there just to be like, this is what I think you're going to be writing about in here. Right. And then your methods are going to be the when, the who, and by who, that's really not like the people. That's the, what tree did we use? What are the coordinates of the tree? Yeah. Okay. So it's not the people, it's the data. Okay. How did you collect it? And then how did you analyze it? Yeah. Question. So it might be worth mentioning that we were using volunteer oak trees and why we chose volunteers instead of mature trees. So why did we choose volunteers instead of mature trees? Because we could reach them. Right. So it's worth saying because we wouldn't want to just say oak trees in general, because then the implication is, well, we asked all of the oak trees what their leaves are like. And we didn't ask all of the oak trees. We picked the volunteer ones because we could reach them. So we're not looking at a trend in all of the oak trees. We're just looking at the babies. Okay. And for reasons of practicality, not for reasons of scientific inquiry. Okay. So make sure you say that. And there's some, volunteers were chosen, blah, 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 for whatever size. Anyway, you might explain what a volunteer is since it's in the title, because the person reading this might not know what a volunteer means. So those are the baby trees that just show up because the grown-up trees are happy and they make babies. And you're going to say that in a sciencey way instead of what I just said. Yes? You're going to use grown-up words, not the shenanigans that just came out of my mouth. Okay? All right. You're going to copy and paste your graph right here once it's all pretty, right? You're going to write a description of that figure. So I'm going to let you figure that out, right? You might want to have a little like table off to the side, right? That kind of lists the stats that you need to report just so that they're there and you can like refer to, it's easier for your reader to look at. Okay. And then here's a little description of the figure at the left shows the regression between the slope of the line is blah, blah, blah. Like, what does that mean? Okay. Now in the discussion, what are you going to be talking about? Right. So what are you going to need to address there? You're going to need to address, what your stats mean, and not just P, but what does the R and the R squared tell you? Is the regression positive or negative? Right. So all the stuff that we talked about here is the stuff that you're going to want to address, right? So you're going to say, so you report the R in the results section, but then you explain what then you explain what your R means, what the R tells you in the discussion, right? And what does the R squared tell you in the discussion? And then what does the P tell you? Yeah? Okay. You might include sources of error, right? How quality was your data collection, right? You might hear mention something about like, does baby trees represent like all trees? I don't know. So that might be worth saying is, something along the lines of like, we used young trees because those were more accessible to us, but that trend may not apply for adult trees. Yeah. So I think that you probably are going to want to, right? Because we sort of said that we think that that's going to happen, but why did we think that? So, so last time when we were talking about the interior versus exterior, right? I don't know if that happens with little trees. It might or might not. Okay. But one thing I do know is I know that when we talked about it, hold on one second. I know that when we talked about it, where is it? Is it this one? It's not there. Hold on. Hold, please. This. I do know that when we talked about it, I was referencing this book. You don't have this book. I have this book. Right? So you could assume if you're saying we think because of what we did here that the same thing is going to apply, you can totally reference this if you want to. Or you could look up something in your textbook in Freeman about leaf size, because there's this whole thing in Freeman about leaf plasticity and how leaves are bigger versus smaller depending on if they're growing in the sun or the shade. So I'll let you look in the table of content in the index in Freeman and find what section refers to that. Read it real quick and just that's your reference. That's your lit cited is your textbook. Okay. And I'll let you find where that is. And then remember, we use CSE style, which is this. So you can like copy it, copy the style from here, or you can also go into Canvas and be like, no. Did I close it? Dang. Let me just open that real quick. You could go into Canvas and look at the directions for how to do CSE. So modules, dun, 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 dun. Here we are. There's this field report guidelines, right? And then the CSE is I can copy this and put that in there too. You can add that there also if I want to, or you can just look at it from the previous week. So that's your directions for how to cite. Okay. All right. So let's look at my homework assignment that I have in here and let's figure out what that's going to look like. So we didn't use a palm. What? Okay. So I'll put our class data here, but you're just, actually, I'm not even going to give you the class data. I'm going to give you the, because you have your own data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you your like data file that's blank for you to fill in. Okay. And then I'm also going to give you a link to this sad video. This is an old sad video. I'll give you the link to the current sad video. And then of course your StatCat, I'm gonna leave that link. And then I'm also gonna give you the like basic lab report, but and so you did not do a single leaf here. In this case, we did not do a single leaf. You did lab reflected data you collected for your stem. Okay. All right. And then when do we want this to be due? I'm going to give you a little bit longer on this, mostly because it's going to take me a long time to get, because I got to grade your guys' exams and I got to grade your difference in means labs. And that's going to take me a while. So how about we're going to tentatively put this due on next Friday, but I might bump it a little bit farther out if it seems like you guys are swamped and or you're like, we need our other lab report back, Sarah, before we can do this one. We need feedback. Okay, so that'll be the plan, and then we'll see where we are. All right. So questions? Do we feel like we know what we're doing with this? Okay, I'm gonna put the files in here and then I'm gonna save it, and then I think we're okay. So, like I said, for those of you that are struggling with your with Excel because you have a Chromebook, all you gotta do, you guys, all you got to do is go to the, is the web version of Office giving you trouble? I'm gonna actually change the title of that to need access to Excel. Okay? Okay, I'm gonna stop recording now.
So for the